AITA for exposing my wife's lie after she claimed I had no right to our house. I'm Lewis, 37, and by the time this happened, I had been Avery's husband for 9 years. We had the kind of marriage where I still knew which brand of coffee creamer she wanted without asking, and she still knew I would fix the loose handle on the back door before I fixed anything for myself. For a long time, I thought that was what marriage was. Doing the quiet things. Paying the bill before the late fee hit. Replacing the filter before the air started smelling dusty. Picking up the prescription because you were already out and she hated waiting in line. Not every effort needed an announcement. Then I learned that when one person stays quiet too long, the other person can start treating silence like permission to rewrite the whole story. Avery was always better at presentation than I was. I don't mean that as an insult, or at least I didn't at first. She could walk into a room and make people feel like she had everything handled. Her clothes always looked intentional. Her texts sounded polished. Even when she was stressed, she knew how to frame it like she was managing a crisis with grace. Early in our marriage, I admired that about her. I liked that she made our life look stable. I liked that her family thought we were solid. I liked that when people came over, the house looked put together and Avery could say, "We've been working on it." And everyone nodded like we were a team. But slowly, we started to mean Avery in public and both of us in private. The first time I noticed it, it was something stupid. The handle on the back door had been loose for months. Avery kept saying it was embarrassing when people came over, so one Saturday I took it apart, drove to the hardware store 2 times because the first replacement didn't line up, and fixed it. It was not heroic. It was a back door handle. The next day her mother, Diane, came by, pulled the door shut behind her, and said, "Oh, Avery, you finally got this fixed. Good. I kept telling you not to wait on Lewis forever." I looked at Avery, waiting for the easy correction. Avery smiled and said, "Yeah, I couldn't stand it anymore." I didn't want to start an argument over a door handle, so I let it go. Later, when Diane left, I said, "Why did you let your mom think you fixed that?" Avery was rinsing a mug in the sink. She didn't even turn around. Because correcting her would make things awkward. It was just a repair. "Exactly," she said. "So why are you being weird?" That became the pattern. If I corrected something, I was being weird. If I mentioned money, I was keeping score. If I pointed out that I had paid for something, I was obsessed with credit. A few months after the door handle, we had a roof leak. Not a catastrophic one, but enough that the ceiling in the hallway bubbled and stained after a heavy rain. Avery panicked because she had invited people over the following weekend, and she hated the idea of anyone seeing the damage. I called around, found someone who could come out quickly, and paid the deposit from my account because the shared account was low after the mortgage draft. The repair cost more than either of us wanted to spend. Avery thanked me that night, standing in the hallway with her arms crossed, staring at the patched ceiling like it had personally insulted her. "I know that was a lot," she said. "I'll move money over after my transfer clears." She never did. 2 weeks later, Diane came over, looked up at the clean ceiling, and said, "Avery, thank God you handled that. Your father would have lost his mind if he saw water damage." Avery gave this small laugh. "Yeah, I stayed on top of it." Again, I waited. Again, nothing. This time I said, "I actually paid the contractor." Diane blinked like I had interrupted a prayer. Avery's smile froze. "I mean," I added, already regretting the tone in the room, "we both handled it, but the payment came from my account." Avery waited until Diane was in the bathroom before she turned on me. "Are you serious?" "What? You had to say that." "It was true. You made me look like I lied." I remember standing by the kitchen island with my hand on the edge of the counter, thinking how strange that sentence was. Not "I lied." Not "I should have said something." It was "You made me look like I lied." That was Avery. The appearance of the thing bothered her more than the thing. Money became the place where our marriage started getting cold. We weren't broke, but we had the normal pressure that comes with a mortgage, repairs, insurance, family obligations, and the slow creep of bills that seemed harmless one by one. Avery liked the house looking a certain way. She liked people thinking she had chosen well, built well, lived well. I liked stability. I liked knowing the lights were paid for and the mortgage cleared. Sometimes Avery's timing was off. She would spend from her account assuming a transfer would arrive by Friday. Then something would delay, and suddenly she would ask me to cover the gap. At first, it was normal. "Can you move $600 into the mortgage account?" I'll put it back next week. I would do it. Can you handle the insurance this month? I paid for the water heater. Except when I checked, I had paid for the water heater too, because she had asked me to put it on my card and promised to reimburse me after a bonus that never seemed to land where she said it would. It wasn't that I never made mistakes. I forgot a bill once and paid the late fee myself. I bought things without talking to her and annoyed her. I got defensive when she said I was too quiet, and sometimes I chose silence because it was easier than having the same fight with different nouns. But I did not do nothing. I did not coast. I did not live in a house she carried while I sat around watching her drown. Avery began telling people I wasn't great with finances. She said it lightly enough that it sounded like a loving complaint. At brunch with her mother, she said, "Louis gets overwhelmed by numbers, so I try to keep us organized." I almost laughed because I was the one with folders of payment confirmations and tax documents, but Diane nodded like it confirmed something she already suspected. Another time, Avery's cousin asked how the HVAC service went, and Avery said, "Expensive, but I handled it." I had paid the invoice 3 days earlier. When we got home, I asked why she kept doing that. Avery kicked off her shoes near the hallway and sighed like I was asking her to defend a crime. Because saying Louis paid this and Louis paid that makes you sound like you want to meddle. I don't want to meddle. I want the truth. You want credit. That's not the same thing. She looked at me, tired and sharp. Normal husbands don't keep receipts against their wives. I said, normal wives don't ask their husbands to hide the receipts. That silenced her for about 10 seconds. Then she said, "You're so sensitive about money." There it was. The label that made every fact sound like a character flaw. For years, I let that word shame me. Sensitive, insecure, petty, weirdly obsessed with credit. I started letting people believe things because correcting them seemed smaller than the fight a correction would cause. During one argument, after Avery told me I was embarrassing her by acting like an accountant in our marriage, I said something I regretted for a long time. "Fine," I said. "Tell them whatever you want." I meant it as exhaustion. She heard it as permission. After that, the stories got bigger. Diane started making comments that weren't even subtle. A decent husband doesn't make his wife beg for security. Some women have to build everything themselves. Avery has always been the responsible one. I would be sitting right there, sometimes holding the check after paying for dinner, and Diane would talk like I was a stray Avery had taken in. Avery never corrected her. Sometimes she squeezed my knee under the table like I was supposed to understand that public correction would be rude. Sometimes she changed the subject. Sometimes she just watched to see if I would react. I didn't. Not the way she expected. I didn't yell. I didn't throw receipts on the table. I didn't call Diane out in front of everyone. I told myself that adults in healthy marriages didn't perform financial trials and family conversations. The problem was, Avery was already performing one. I was the only person pretending we weren't on stage. The year before the notary appointment, our marriage got more transactional. Avery talked about security constantly. She used words like future, clean break, protection, and clarity. At first, I thought she was anxious. Then I realized she was building towards something. One night, she sat across from me at the kitchen table with a folder beside her hand. I remember the table had a tiny wobble because one of the felt pads had fallen off the leg, and I kept pressing my foot against it to keep it still while she talked. "We need to clean up paperwork," she said. "What paperwork?" "House stuff. Refinance stuff. It's practical." I looked at the folder. "Why now?" "Because I'm tired of feeling like everything is vague." Everything. The house. Money. What happens if things change? That was the first time she said it out loud. "If things change." I asked, "Are you talking about separating?" She didn't answer directly. Avery almost never answered directly when a clean answer would cost her control. "I'm talking about being mature," she said. "Neither of us should feel trapped because of money." I leaned back. "Okay, send me the documents." She smiled like I had asked her to hand over state secrets. "I'll send them. They're standard." "Standard for what?" "For the refinance. For clarifying ownership." "Clarifying how?" She closed the folder. "See, this is why I didn't want to bring it up until we had everything organized. You make simple things complicated." I didn't fight her that night. That was part habit and part strategy. By then, I had started to understand that Avery reacted to questions by turning the questioner into the problem. If I pushed too hard before I had information, she would accuse me of being paranoid, then use my confusion as proof that I didn't understand anything. So I said, just send me the full packet before any appointment. She said she would. She didn't. What she sent 2 days later were 3 screenshots. Cropped. No full page. No headers. One had a signature line. One had a paragraph about refinancing. One had language about separate contribution history, but the top and bottom of the page were cut off. I texted back, I need the full documents, not screenshots. She replied, you're exhausting. I wrote, I'm not signing screenshots. She didn't answer for 4 hours. Then she sent, the appointment is Thursday. We can review everything there. That was when I called Owen. Owen has known me long enough to know when I'm trying to sound calmer than I am. I called him from my car because I didn't want Avery hearing me ask whether I was overreacting. I barely got through the explanation before he said, do not sign anything. I wasn't planning to sign blindly. No, he said. I mean, do not sign anything under emotional pressure. Read every line. Ask for copies. If she acts offended that you want to understand a legal document, that's your answer. She says it's standard. Standard documents can still screw you. I rubbed my forehead and watched people walking in and out of the grocery store like the world was normal everywhere except my front seat. She keeps making it sound like I'm proving I'm with her for money if I hesitate, I said. Owen was quiet for a second. Then he said, being calm is fine. Being cornered is different. After I hung up with Owen, I called my sister, Rachel. Rachel is younger than me, but she has always been more direct. She loves me enough to be rude when I need it. I told her the same story while sorting mail at the counter. Bank envelopes. Insurance notice. A flyer Avery had tossed on top of everything. Rachel didn't even let me finish. She calls you sensitive when facts are inconvenient, she said. I laughed once, not because it was funny, but because it landed too cleanly. She says I keep score. Do you? I keep records. Good, Rachel said. People who don't want records usually benefit from confusion. I don't want this to become ugly. Louis, it is already ugly. You're just the only one still whispering. That night, I opened my laptop after Avery went to bed and started pulling records. Mortgage transfers from my personal account into the shared mortgage account. Payment confirmations. Insurance drafts. The HVAC invoice. The roof repair deposit and final payment. The water heater receipt. Screenshots of texts where Avery asked me to cover shortfalls. One text from Avery from the previous spring read, can you move $1,200 before the mortgage drafts? Please don't mention this to my mom. She'll make it a whole thing. Another said, thank you for saving us from another late notice. I know I've been scattered. I took screenshots with timestamps. I downloaded PDFs. I made a folder that said House Records, then changed the name to something boring because I didn't want to fight if Avery saw it. I printed what mattered at a copy shop and put everything in a plain envelope. I also scheduled a short attorney consultation, not a dramatic divorce move. Just 30 minutes with someone who could tell me whether I was looking at ordinary refinance paperwork or a trap wearing clean shoes. The attorney didn't give me a full strategy in 30 minutes, but she gave me enough. Do not sign a quitclaim deed unless you fully understand what you are giving up, she said. And if there is language waiving reimbursement claims, you need independent review before anything is notarized. Would it erase what I paid? I asked. It may not erase reality, but it could make recovery harder, depending on the exact terms and your state's rules. The bigger issue is that you have not received full documents. That alone is reason to pause. I wrote that down on a legal pad. Do not sign without full docs. Ask for independent review. Pressure matters. Document refusal clearly. When I got home, Avery was in the living room with her feet tucked under her, scrolling on her phone. She looked up and said, "You've been weird all week." I asked for the full packet. "You'll see it there." That's not enough. She locked her phone and set it face down. "If you're not with me for the house, why are you scared to sign? Love is not a reason to sign something I haven't been allowed to read." Her jaw tightened. "You make everything sound sinister. You made a signing appointment and won't show me the papers. It's about security." "For who?" "For me," she snapped, then softened immediately like she realized that sounded too honest. "For both of us. A clean future. No resentment. No one feeling trapped." I said, "Then transparency should be easy." Avery stood up, grabbed her phone, and walked toward the bedroom. "You're proving why this needs to be official." The appointment was at 10 the next morning. I barely slept. Not because I was confused anymore, but because clarity has its own kind of weight. At 6:30, I made coffee for myself. For the first time in years, I didn't set out Avery's creamer. It was petty in the smallest possible way, but I noticed it. My hands did too. They hovered near the fridge before I stopped myself. Avery came into the kitchen dressed like she was going to a meeting she expected to win. Smooth blouse, neat hair, earrings her mother had given her. She looked composed. I looked like a man who had slept in 20-minute pieces. Her phone was on the counter while she searched her purse for her keys. The screen lit up. I didn't pick it up. I didn't touch it. I just saw the preview because it was right there, bright against the dark counter. Caleb, did he agree to sign, or do you still need me there to make him feel outnumbered? For a second, everything in the room went silent except the refrigerator hum. Avery saw my face and snatched the phone so fast her keys fell out of her purse and hit the floor. I said, "Make me feel outnumbered?" She stared at me. Her mouth opened, closed, then hardened. "You're proving exactly why I needed witnesses." Witnesses to what? To the fact that I'm not going to be bullied by you. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the audacity was so complete it felt unreal. Who is Caleb in this appointment? You know who Caleb is. I know he's your ex. I'm asking why he's coming to a legal signing for our house. He understands paperwork. Then why is he texting about making me feel outnumbered? Avery shoved her phone into her purse. We're going to be late. That was the moment I stopped wondering whether I was being paranoid. I had walked around for years trying not to look like the jealous husband, the petty husband, the insecure husband, the man who kept score. But this wasn't jealousy. This wasn't scorekeeping. This was my wife arranging an audience to pressure me into signing away rights she had spent years telling people I had not earned. I thought about canceling. I thought about telling her to go alone. Instead, I picked up my envelope and my legal pad. I didn't go to sign. I went because if I refused from home, Avery would tell everyone I hid. If I got angry, she would tell everyone I exploded. If I stayed silent, she would tell everyone I knew she was right. So I want to make sure nobody could say later that I refused because I had something to hide. The signing office was aggressively neutral. Beige walls, gray carpet, a counter with clipped pins attached by little chains, a printer humming behind a half-open door, a bowl of mints near the ID scanner. It was the kind of place where people handled life-changing paperwork under fluorescent lights while someone asked if they wanted copies. Diane was already there. So was Caleb. Diane sat in a chair near the counter with her purse on her lap and her lips pressed together. She looked at me like I was late to my own sentencing. Caleb stood when we walked in. He was calm in that polished way men use when they want everyone to know they are above the mess they chose to stand inside. He held out his hand. "Louis," he said, "no hard feelings. Sometimes clean endings are best." I looked at his hand, then shook it once. "Clean for who?" His smile flickered. Avery stepped between us with a bright, tight voice. "Can we please not start?" Diane sighed. "After everything she has carried, Louis, this is the decent thing." I turned toward her. "Good morning, Diane." That seemed to irritate her more than if I had argued. The signing coordinator introduced herself as Ms. Parker. She was probably around 50, with reading glasses on a chain and the careful expression of someone who had learned not to react too quickly in rooms where people brought personal problems to paperwork. She asked for our IDs. She checked names, dates, signatures. She laid out the packet in front of us, tapping pages into alignment. "Before anyone signs," Ms. Parker said, "I need to confirm that everyone understands what these documents do and that signatures are voluntary." Avery gave a little laugh. "Of course." Ms. Parker looked at me. "Have you reviewed the full packet in advance?" Before I could answer, Avery said, "He had the relevant pages." Ms. Parker kept her eyes on me. I said no. I asked for the full documents and did not receive them. Avery's head snapped toward me. "You received enough to understand. That is not the same thing." Caleb folded his arms. "Sometimes dragging things out only makes it harder." I looked at him. "You're here as what exactly?" Avery cut in. "He's here for support." "For you?" "For the process," she said. Diane muttered. "Someone has to keep this clean." Ms. Parker placed both hands lightly on the packet. "I am not here to decide your marriage. I am not an attorney, and I cannot give legal advice. But I do need everyone to understand what they are signing." "Great," I said. "Then please read the sections about the quitclaim transfer and reimbursement waiver." Avery's face tightened. Lewis. I didn't look at her. Please. Miss Parker paused, then adjusted her glasses. There is language here stating that you would convey your interest in the property by quitclaim deed. There is also language acknowledging separate contribution history and waiving future claims for reimbursement related to prior payments, improvements, repairs, and carrying costs. Subject to the terms written here. Hearing it out loud was different. My attorney had warned me, but the words still landed like a weight. Avery had not asked me to clean up paperwork. She had asked me to help her erase me. I said, so this isn't just a refinance signature. Miss Parker said carefully. It appears to include transfer and waiver language. Avery said, because it has to be clean. You said you weren't with me for money. Signing should be easy. There it was. In front of her mother. In front of her ex. In front of a neutral stranger. The test she had built. Prove you loved me by giving up what I can take if you hesitate. Diane leaned forward. A decent husband wouldn't make his wife beg for security. I opened the envelope and slid the first set of records onto the counter. I agree, I said. Nobody should have to beg for security. That includes me. Avery looked at the papers like I had put something dirty between us. What is this? Payment records. Caleb exhaled through his nose. Lewis, if you didn't build it, why fight this hard to keep it? I turned one page toward him. Because I did build it. Avery gave a sharp laugh. You paid for small things, and now you're acting like you bought the house. I placed the mortgage transfer history on top. Miss Parker did not touch it at first. I can't adjudicate financial disputes. I understand, I said. But if the premise in the room is that I never paid for anything real, everyone should at least see why I'm not signing that language today. Miss Parker glanced down. Her eyes moved across the dates and amounts. Avery said, this is completely inappropriate. Miss Parker said, I am only looking to understand whether there is a dispute that affects willingness to sign. Diane stood up and came closer despite herself. Miss Parker looked at Avery, then at me. These appear to be transfers into the mortgage account. Yes. From your account? Yes. Avery said quickly, that's not the whole story. I said exactly. That's why I brought the rest. I slid over automatic payment confirmations. Insurance. Emergency mortgage gaps. The roof repair invoice. HVAC service. Water heater replacement. Not every bill in 9 years, because I wasn't trying to bury the room in paper. Just enough to show a pattern. Diane's mouth had gone small. Avery, she said, quieter now, is any of this fake? Avery didn't answer. Diane asked again, is it fake? Avery's voice turned thin. It's selective. That wasn't my question, Diane said. Caleb shifted his weight. For the first time, he didn't look like a man helping a woman escape a useless husband. He looked like a man realizing he had walked into someone else's lie wearing a clean shirt. I turned to him. Were you asked to come here because you understood the paperwork, or because you were asked to make me feel outnumbered? Avery snapped, don't. Caleb looked at her. What is he talking about? The text, I said. His face changed before he could stop it. I didn't need to show the phone. I didn't need to prove I had seen it. His reaction did that for me. Diane looked from Caleb to Avery. What text? Caleb rubbed the back of his neck. Avery told me he was going to stall and make this impossible. I told you I needed support, Avery said. You told me he barely contributed, Caleb said. The room went so quiet I heard the printer stop behind the door. Avery's eyes flashed. You don't know what it was like being married to him. No, Caleb said slowly. But I know what you told me. I put another page on the counter. It was a printed screenshot of a text from Avery. Please move $1,200 before the mortgage drafts. Please don't mention this to my mom. She'll make it a whole thing. Diane read it. Her face lost its certainty first, then its color. I placed a voicemail transcript beside it. Avery had left it months earlier after I covered a shortfall she had sworn she would handle. Lewis, I know I snapped, but thank you. You saved us from another late notice. I'll fix my side next month. Just please don't bring it up to Mom. I can't deal with her acting like I'm irresponsible. Diane touched the paper with 2 fingers like it might burn her. You told me he didn't help, she said. Avery looked trapped for half a second before anger rescued her. Because help doesn't mean holding it over my head forever. I didn't hold it over your head, I said. I kept it off your mother's radar because you asked me to. You're humiliating me. I looked around the little office. Diane stiff near the counter. Caleb staring at the floor. Ms. Parker holding the packet closed with both hands. A couple of people in the waiting area pretending not to listen. No, I said. You brought an audience for a lie. I brought proof. Avery's eyes filled, but not in the way they did when she was hurt. I knew the difference by then. These were panic tears, the kind that came when control slipped. You're making this uglier than it has to be, she said, signing that would have made it ugly for me very quietly. Ms. Parker put down her pen. We are not proceeding today, she said. Avery turned toward her. Why not? Because there is clearly a dispute over the terms and contribution history, and Mr. Lewis has stated he has not had independent review or the full documents in advance. I am not notarizing signatures under these circumstances. I'm not pressuring him, Avery said. Ms. Parker's face stayed neutral. Then there should be no issue with rescheduling after review. Caleb took a step back from the counter. Avery saw it and whispered, Seriously? He didn't answer. That was when I formally refused. I am not signing today, I said. Please note that I declined because I did not receive the full documents beforehand, and because I want independent legal review. Ms. Parker nodded. I can note that the appointment did not proceed. Avery grabbed her purse. This is unbelievable. I gathered my papers slowly, not to be dramatic, but because my hands were shaking and I didn't want anyone to see it. I put every page back in the envelope except the copies I left on the counter for Diane and Caleb. Not everything, just the parts connected to the lies they had repeated. Diane didn't pick hers up right away. Lewis, she said, but then stopped. I waited. She had nothing. Not yet. So I left. The parking lot air felt too bright. I stood beside my car, keys in my hand, breathing like I had walked out of a room with no oxygen. Avery came after me. You humiliated me, she said. I unlocked my car, but didn't open the door. You made yourself look bad when you needed lies to make me small. Her mouth twisted. You loved that, didn't you? No. You've been waiting to punish me. No. Then why bring all that? Because you tried to make me sign away a history you rewrote. She stepped closer. I needed security, Lewis. So did I. You never cared how scared I was. I cared enough to cover the bills you asked me to hide. That's not fair. I turned toward her fully. You don't get to use fairness now like it's a fire extinguisher. For once, she didn't have a polished answer ready. Caleb walked out a minute later. He didn't come toward us. He gave Avery one look, then went to his car. Avery watched him go. Great. Now you've dragged him into this. I almost lost my temper then. Not because of Caleb himself, but because even in that moment, she framed him as someone I had dragged in when she had invited him to make me feel outnumbered. You brought him, I said. He was trying to help. He was trying to help the version of you that made me disposable. Avery's eyes hardened again. You're going to regret making me your enemy. I opened my car door. I'm not making you anything. Then I got in and drove away. I didn't go home immediately. I parked near a quiet strip of closed storefronts and called Owen. He answered with, You signed nothing, right? Nothing. Good. I told him what happened. The text. Diane. Caleb. Ms. Parker refusing to proceed. Owen listened without interrupting until I finished. Then he said, Do not send her an angry message. I know. I'm serious. Do not give them one angry message they can use. I know. Facts first. Feelings after. I sat there gripping the phone, watching my own reflection in the windshield. I didn't look victorious. I looked tired and older than I had that morning. I'm not going back into that house like nothing happened, I said. Then don't, Owen said. But do it clean. That became my rule for the next several months. Do it clean. I sent Avery one email that afternoon. For clarity, I will not discuss property, payments, refinancing, reimbursement, or related financial issues verbally. Put requests in writing or have them sent through counsel. I will continue to document shared obligations as required, but I will not sign any property document without full advance copies and independent review. She called me 8 times. I didn't answer. She texted, You're acting insane. I didn't respond. She texted, You can't just stop being my husband because one appointment went badly. I didn't respond. Then she texted, My mom is devastated. That one almost got me. Not because I felt guilty for Diane, but because Avery knew which hooks usually worked on me. Family piece. Appearances. Being the bigger person. Don't make it awkward. Don't embarrass anyone. I put the phone face down and opened a separate bank account for my income. I did not drain the shared account. I did not stop legally required payments. I did not touch anything I had no right to touch. But I stopped automatic payments that were solely discretionary or solely in Avery's name. Subscriptions she had told people she paid for. A furniture balance she had promised to handle. A personal card where I was paying minimums because she said she needed one less thing on her plate. For years, I had been quietly financing the version of Avery that looked effortless. I stopped. The next day, I changed passwords on my personal banking, email, and cloud storage. Not because I thought Avery was some criminal mastermind, but because trust had become a bad security plan. I filled out a mail forwarding form for anything personal. I requested certified copies of property records. I scheduled a longer attorney meeting. With Owen as a witness, I went to the house while Avery was out and collected personal documents, spare keys, old tax folders, a box of photos from before the marriage, and a few sentimental things I knew would become leverage if I left them. My passport. My birth certificate. A watch my grandfather had given me. The folder with the original mortgage paperwork. I rented a small storage unit that smelled like dust and cardboard. When the metal door rolled down after I put my boxes inside, I felt a sadness I wasn't ready for. That unit held more than documents. It held proof that my marriage had reached the point where I had to rescue paper before emotion. Avery started the social version 3 days later. I heard it from Mira, a mutual friend who texted me carefully. Hey, I don't want to get in the middle, but Avery said you refused to help with the house and walked out of a signing that was supposed to protect her. Is everything okay? I stared at the message for a long time. A year earlier, I might have ignored it. I might have thought, let people believe what they want. The truth will come out. The truth does not come out by itself. People carry stories. If the first story is a lie and nobody challenges it, the lie gets comfortable. I replied, that is not accurate. I'm not discussing private details broadly, but I refused to sign documents I had not been given in full, including a waiver affecting property rights and reimbursement claims. I have records of payments and repairs that contradict the claim that I didn't contribute. Mira wrote back. She said the house was basically hers. I almost smiled. Avery loved that word. Basically, a word that did heavy work without having to survive court. I replied, basically is not a legal term. Mira didn't answer for an hour. Then she wrote, I had no idea. I'm sorry. I sent similar short replies only when people came directly to me. No public posts. No group chat essay. No long rant. I was not trying to destroy Avery. I was trying to stop participating in my own erasure. Avery hated that more than shouting. When she couldn't get me on the phone, she emailed, You're punishing me because I finally protected myself. I forwarded it to my attorney. She wrote again, You are making me look like a liar. I did respond to that one, because it deserved a record. You needed lies to make me small. I stopped helping. That was all. Diane didn't contact me for nearly 2 weeks. I assumed Avery had pulled her back into the original story somehow. Then one evening, I got a text. Lewis, this is Diane. I would like to talk. I didn't answer right away. I sent it to my attorney, who said personal contact was not illegal, but advised me to keep property discussions in writing and not get pulled into pressure. So I wrote, I am not discussing property or financial issues outside written channels. If this is personal, you can text it. She replied 20 minutes later. I judged before I knew. I shouldn't have done that. I read that sentence several times. It was not a movie apology. It did not fix the years of comments or the way she looked at me in that office. It did not erase after everything she carried. It didn't even say she was sorry for calling me indecent without using the word. But it was an admission. I replied, I appreciate you saying it. It doesn't undo what happened. She wrote, I know. That was the last sincere thing Diane sent for a while. Caleb never apologized. Not really. He sent one stiff message through Avery's old thread, maybe because he didn't want to create a separate channel. I was told the financial situation was different. I'm stepping back. I didn't answer. That was enough. Caleb didn't need to become noble for me to get closure. He had walked into a room, wanting to be the reasonable man Avery should have chosen. He walked out realizing he had been used as furniture. The legal process was not fast, glamorous, or satisfying in the way revenge stories pretend it is. There were attorney emails with careful wording, document requests, more bank statements, more invoices, mediator scheduling, follow-ups about whether a payment was for household improvements or regular expenses, arguments over dates. Arguments over classifications. Arguments over whether Avery's account being listed on something meant she paid it, even when the transfer came from mine. Avery's side tried to frame my records as marital money, which was partly fair and partly strategic. My attorney explained that marriage finances are rarely clean boxes. Not every dollar I paid would come back dollar for dollar. Not every receipt meant equity. But the records mattered because Avery could no longer argue that I had no stake, no contribution, and no right to question the paperwork. The papers did what opinions couldn't. They made everyone stop speaking in vibes. At mediation, Avery looked different. Less polished. Not broken, just tired in the way people get tired when they can no longer control the lighting around them. She still tried. This was never about taking anything from him, she said. My attorney slid the prior signing packet across the table. Then why include a waiver of reimbursement claims in documents he was not fully shown beforehand? Avery looked at her attorney. Her attorney looked at the page. No one had a clean answer. Avery said, "I wanted security." My attorney said, "Security is different from concealment." I sat there saying very little. That was harder than people think. When someone has lied about you for years, every sentence in your body wants to line up and march out. But Owen's voice stayed in my head. Facts first, feelings after. So when the mediator asked me what I wanted, I said, "I want a documented resolution that recognizes my financial stake and does not require me to waive a false history." Avery stared at me. "You sound like a stranger." I looked at her, and for a second I saw the woman I used to make coffee for without thinking. The woman who knew I would fix a back door handle before I fixed anything for myself. The woman who could have asked for fairness and probably gotten more compassion from me than she deserved. "I think I sounded like a stranger for a long time," I said. "You just preferred that version." The house issue eventually closed through a settlement. Avery could not buy me out on the terms required, not without admitting numbers she had spent months denying. Selling was the cleanest option. Cleanest did not mean painless. There were fees, delays, inspections, repairs neither of us wanted to pay for, and one last argument about a credit at closing. But the final terms recognized my stake. I did not get a fantasy payday. I lost money to legal fees. I lost sleep. I lost the illusion that 9 years of quiet effort would protect me from being publicly minimized by the person who benefited from it. There were mornings I woke up angry before I remembered why. There were nights I almost texted Avery just to ask how she could sit beside me for so long while building a story where I barely existed. I didn't send those messages. When the closing was done, I received my share by documented transfer after the final settlement accounting. I looked at the number on the screen and felt less triumph than relief. It was not about winning the house. It had never really been about winning the house. It was about not signing away the truth because someone had dressed a lie in legal language. Avery sent one long message after everything finalized. I could tell from the first sentence that she had written it for an audience, even if she sent it only to me. "You ruined my reputation with my family and our friends. You made everyone think I'm a liar when all I wanted was to protect myself after years of feeling alone in this marriage. I hope someday you understand how cruel you were." I read it once. Then again. My thumb hovered over the screen longer than it should have. There was a version of me that would have responded paragraph by paragraph. I would have explained the late payments, the roof, the water heater, the texts, the notary appointment, the look on Diane's face, Caleb's message, the years of being told I was insecure every time I remembered the truth. But explanations are for people trying to understand. Avery was still trying to edit. I wrote back once. "I protected myself from a story you built to take more than you were owed." Then I blocked her number and left communication to counsel for anything remaining. Diane sent a card about a month later. No dramatic confession. No emotional speech. Just a plain card with handwriting I recognized from years of birthday envelopes. Inside, she wrote, "I am sorry I believed I knew the whole story. I was wrong to speak to you the way I did." I didn't frame it. I didn't throw it away. I put it in a drawer with other things that mattered but did not heal everything. Mira and a few friends stayed in my life in a quieter way. Some people disappeared because choosing not to know is easier than admitting you repeated a lie. I let them go. I had spent too long auditioning for people who were comfortable with me only when I was useful and silent. My life after that was smaller for a while. New keys. Different routines. Coffee made only for myself. Mail that came to me alone. Bills that were boring because nobody was using them as evidence in a private war. The first time I fixed something in my new place, it was a cabinet hinge that squeaked every time I opened it. I replaced it, tested the door twice, and stood there waiting for the old feeling. The expectation that someone would notice, or not notice, or take credit, or make me feel petty for caring. Nothing happened. The cabinet just closed correctly. That was enough. I don't pretend I was perfect in that marriage. I was avoidant. I chose quiet when I should have chosen clarity. I let keeping the peace become a habit that protected everyone except me. I thought dignity meant never correcting the record in public. I was wrong about that. Dignity is not silence. Sometimes dignity is a folder of bank statements slid across a notary counter while your hands shake and your voice stays level. Sometimes it is refusing to sign. Sometimes it is letting people be uncomfortable because the truth has finally entered the room. Avery wanted me to prove I loved her by giving up my place in the house. She wanted me to stand at a counter, surrounded by people she had prepared to judge me, and agree on paper that her version of our life was the only one that counted. She wanted me to sign away my place in the house. Instead, I signed myself out of the lie. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.